Please do not watch it unless you really have to. But last Thursday at MIT, Stuart and I were confronted by some orthodox Christians who were really wanting to push transubstantiation. And Stuart and I agreed we did not handle it very well.
If you're watching this video, you're likely aware of a guy named Cliffe If you're watching this video, you're likely aware of a guy named Cliffe. Cliffe is a Christian apologist who often goes primarily to college campuses and engages students there in Christian thought. And in one recent dialogue with a younger Orthodox Christian, Cliffe and his son Stuart, well, how do I say this nicely? They got smoked.
You lose! Good day, sir!
In whatever debate it was that went on, they lost. But I don't think it matters, like, at all. First off, let's hear what Cliffe has to say about that interaction. Then let me tell you some of my thoughts about it, and make sure you stick around until the end because there's going to be some juicy stuff there. In fact, if anything, skip right to the end because that's where I promise you're going to hear a message that needs to be heard.
All right, please do not watch it unless you really have to. But last Thursday at MIT, Stuart and I were confronted by some Orthodox Christians who were really wanting to push transubstantiation. And Stuart and I agreed we did not handle it very well. We never had anybody really push us as hard, and these were great guys, all right? Now, sir, really, I could give a rip whether you believe in transubstantiation or whether you believe communion is symbolic of the death of Christ. I really just don't think it makes that much difference. And I don't want to offend anybody, but if you think our purpose in life is to go around and straighten out people on transubstantiation or symbolism of communion, I strongly disagree. We got people starving to death today. We got people going to hell who need Jesus. And for me to try and convince Catholics that they shouldn't be into transubstantiation, or to convince Protestants that they should believe more strongly in the presence of Christ in communion, I mean, come on. I'm just glad you celebrate communion, okay? Focus on Christ, trust in Him, and go at it. The point I'm trying to make is, let's be careful with a false prophet and true prophet and false Christian and true Christian. Now, we do have to draw some guidelines, some boundary lines. If you deny the deity of Christ, I don't think you're a follower of Christ. Christ claimed to be God. So if you deny His deity and reduce Him to a good teacher, you are not following Christ. Secondly, if you deny His death on a cross to pay the penalty for our sin, you are denying the real Jesus. Thirdly, if you deny His bodily resurrection from the dead, if you talk about His resurrection simply as a spiritual thing, not a physical thing, you are not following Christ. Because the Gospels and the New Testament bend over backwards to communicate the dead Christ physically, bodily, rose from the dead. So those are some of the majors. And yes, there are false prophets, and they twist the living daylights out of the Bible, and they deny Christ. Watch out. Some of those people are Catholics, others are Greek Orthodox, some are Pentecostal, and a bunch of them are Protestant. If I want the hardest debates on a university campus, I do not go to the science department. I go to the religion department. Sad, but true. And I am viewed as an idiot, a narrow-minded, bigoted, fundamentalist Christian, because I'm convinced Jesus is God in human form, He died on a cross for our sins, and He bodily rose from the dead. And that is characterized on most university campuses by the religion department as pathetic. To be honest with you, I will return the compliment. I think it's pathetic for someone to call themselves a Christian and deny the deity of Christ, deny His atoning death, and deny His bodily resurrection. You're totally redefining what it means to be Christian. But it also spills into ethics. That's why John writes in 1 John, if I say I love God, who I cannot see, and hate my brother, who I can see, I'm a liar.
Cliffe and Stuart do massively important work, in my opinion. They often engage young minds who haven't thought very critically at all about some of the deeper issues of life. I mean, go ahead and take a look at any one of the videos I have done on Cliffe and see just how flawed the typical critical thinking of a college student is. Cliffe and Stuart, they don't get pre-approved questions. They don't know what accusations they're going to face when they go to college campuses. Their knowledge reminds me of the saying, a mile wide and a foot deep. And that is not a criticism. In fact, I would say that my interest in religious topics is more or less similar. And I, like them, am obviously more well-versed in certain areas. Often, for myself, I spend a lot of time looking into something, considering the issue from all sides, making up my mind, and then maybe years later, still retaining the knowledge of where I land on the issue, but maybe forgetting some of the details about why I made up my mind that way. Orthodox and more Catholic-leaning theology versus the typical evangelical or Protestant belief system is one such topic that is like that for me. I spent a lot of time looking into that when I was younger, and I decided which one I thought made more sense. Now, if you ask me years later why I made that decision, I could not recall every single detail as to why. And I think it's likely that Cliffe and Stuart are in the exact same boat. The debates between Protestants and Catholics have been raging for 1,000 years or more. The arguments are deep on both sides and robust. If your particular brand of faith gets rocked by who may have or may not have won a casual back and forth discussion or debate, then might I suggest you don't put your faith on such shallow ground. And to the Orthodox Christians claiming that this is some sort of major victory, might I also suggest the same. If you think that Cliffe Nechtel, a man who I deeply respect, was a perfect arbiter of typical evangelical or Protestant beliefs on things like transubstantiation, you're deeply mistaken. Also, might I suggest that if you're looking for a victory in that regard, you might be missing the forest for the trees. I don't know if you've noticed, but certain events in the world over the past 5 years have completely changed the playing field. There is a whole field of people out there ready for harvest, a whole generation of people who have had their eyes opened and are now considering the reality that God might exist. Let's keep our eyes on that prize. Now, maybe you have accepted that God exists. Then perhaps it would be good to think deeply about the ideas of Catholicism compared to Protestantism, or issues like transubstantiation, and to know where you might stand on those. If that's the path you are on right now, I encourage you to think deeply about those topics and research each one and to see what each side has to say. But if you think it might actually be valuable for somebody like me to dust off the old textbooks and study materials that first convinced me that Catholicism was not a sect of Christianity that I could take part in, but that there are aspects about it that I still deeply respect, then let me know in the comments, and I could do more videos like that to help guide you. But let's not lose focus on the bigger picture. Something is happening right now, and it is big. Perhaps it's not the time to go to war with each other.